Hi everyone, and thanks so much for coming, and thanks for the lovely welcome and introduction. And it's really lovely to have been invited here as you guys are starting your journey with CONNECTPLUS and particularly with PebblePad. It's often interesting to take that retrospective look at what we've done and through your eyes, you know, seeing us as having paved the way. And I don't mean that in a big noting kind of way, I mean that in a we've made a lot of mistakes kind of way. So hopefully that there's some experiences that we can help you to not replicate. So it's really lovely to be able to come and share that with you. I'm really glad to have heard, great thinking on the spot, Megan, I'm really glad to have heard from around the room and the reasons that you're here, because you're in the right room. Those of you that wanted to see inside it, we've broken the mould and we're not doing a PowerPoint. We're actually showing our presentation through a portfolio, because I think that the best way to see something is to model it. The best way to understand something is to model it. So that's what we're doing here, and which is why we're not going to have the whiz-bang effects and the fly-ins and fly-outs. We're just going to scroll down the screen, okay? So we're going high-tech but low-tech. All right, so what we're going to talk about today is making meaning of graduate attributes. And as we've heard from Beverly a second ago, this is something that universities struggle with. I think every university, well, I've been to conferences and seminars and we talk about getting the job ad page out and showing students what those qualities are that employers are looking for. Teamwork, communication, organisation, all those qualities. And students will sit there and ask them, and you ask probably any one of us as well, not just students, can you give me an example? Well, there might have been that one time when I think, you know, you just kind of lose it at that point when you're asked to give an example, unless you've done the thinking. And I think that the question that was asked in that session with Beverly about who's going to look at the portfolio, and the answer was, it's about the process and it's about doing the thinking and being able to link the realities of what you're learning across a course. When I say you, I mean students, but probably just, you know, where my head is at that point. So, but linking the realities of the learning and the lessons and all the really discrete siloed courses, the way that we've tended, and I use that past tense as hopefully things are changing, but the way we've tended to design programs has been really siloed. And if we can, and I think graduate attributes emerged as a way to kind of link all that together, but we weren't really sure, we don't really know if it's working. We haven't heard student voices on this. And Beverly alluded to that as well. She said we don't really know what's working. Except I think we do. So that's what you're going to see. That's why we've called it Making Meaning of Graduate Attributes. Okay, so sorry, I'm a Mac and I scroll the opposite way than PC, so I'm sorry if I look like a really novice and a PC driver, because I am. All right, so institutions have all these things, and they do all these things, and they have all these projects around graduate attributes. We have campaigns. I'm going to show you some slides from our campaign in a second. We have these slogans, we have the words, we have all the categories that sit under the words that are decided by committee, as we heard earlier. I mean, no institution is different in this process from what I've heard out and about. So we've spent a lot of energy, a lot of time, a lot of effort, and a lot of money, let's face it, on these graduate attribute projects. These are the images from our most recent graduates campaign. We've had two, actually. This is our most recent campaign. And it was in conjunction with students. So these images are for the students and by the students. I'm just saying that because you might wonder when you see one in a second. Let me just play this. There's no sound. Each of these images represents one of our graduate attributes, believe it or not. Okay, so we have 11 of them. So, as we've all kind of come to discuss, we don't really know what students think. No one's figured out capturing that. And part of me kind of questions, what's the point of putting all this energy into these campaigns if we don't really know what the students are getting out of it? Because isn't that what we're trying to promote and trying to give us a point of difference? Our students lead with. Well, we think they do, but maybe we should try and figure this out. So in order to find out what students think, we decided that we would embed some questioning around graduate attributes in a first year course. And I'm going to contextualise the problem firstly, just so that you understand. It was a large first year course. When I say large, 2,600 students. It's the one course at USC that all first year, well actually all students have to do as the one prerequisite. It's a communications course. That's all I'm going to say about that. So they came to us with a problem. They have the third assessment task is a group work. It used to be a debate. I used to teach in the course for years. I taught 9 semesters in the course, so I'm really familiar with it. In one of its forms, it does more, as most do. And task 3 is an oral presentation in a group. It used to be a debate, now it's more of a take a stance on a topic and each give part of the stance kind of thing. It is, as I said, it's the last assessment item and it's in the final weeks. The presentations happen in weeks 12 and 13 and that's kind of it. It's present and see you later, goodbye, out and go into the world. So part of the task was peer assessment and with over 2,000, 2,500 students, they were all doing peer assessment on a piece of paper and they'll have 3 to 4 people in the, you see where I'm going with this, right? We have 3 to 4 people in the group and already we've got problems, right? We've got tons of trees. Tutors are handing out so many sheets of paper so that all students can grade each other. So I've got mine and I've got all my group members so I can grade, it's ridiculous. But that's the only way, how else could you do it at the time? Not only that, but usually, we get up and we finish our presentation, the tutor would hand us a piece of paper, we all tick, 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 and it's collaborative. So we all get 5s, right? Why wouldn't we all give that to Matthew standing right next to us 5? So everyone got 5s out of 5. So it was a basket out of 5, which I'll show you in a second. So that was the problem. We were in CSOL, and when I was working solely on the Pillow Hat project at the time, that was what they came to me to solve. Can you help us solve this problem? And it morphed a bit, because that's what I'm going to go to this, right? So it morphed a little bit. And as we started looking at, and yes, we built you'll see examples of the student feedback and peer feedback templates in local. But we then decided, and this in consultation with one of the academics they have some committee, what do they call it? The 7 academics teaching. They have 7 permanent academics as a teaching team, but there's about 50 tutors on the team as well. So the permanent academics, one of them kind of took the lead on this particular part of the project. And we decided that task 3, this particular task, the group delivery, the group performance, the learning isn't the getting up and the performing. There used to be an essay after this task where they had to then go and talk about the group process in, it wasn't about the debate, it wasn't about the delivery, it's about all the other stuff, the 5 weeks that we spend on being part of the group, and that's the learning, right? So we thought, why don't we wrap a whole lot of scaffolding around the task with the view to perhaps one day in the future the portfolio becomes assessed instead of the delivery. Because again, let's talk about authenticity in learning and what are our learning outcomes. So the other kind of side to this is that part of our graduate attributes project, and I'm sure it's true for every institution, every single assessment item and course learning outcome has been mapped to the graduate attributes. So there might be 2 or 3 per course. Courses or programs, maybe the right language here. Units. Yeah, good, we speak in the same language. Just have to check sometimes. So each task as well, down to the task level, can have its own graduate attributes that are mapped to the task. So for this particular task, perhaps not surprisingly, the graduate attributes of communication, collaboration and organisation were mapped to this task. And we've got here, they're the images, the specific images for communication, collaboration and organisation. And they had these little taglines, which maybe blurry up there, but as you can see, complex communications, sometimes you really appreciate collaboration and time for a little bit of organisation. process for you. Is that better? Easier to see? Great. Thanks for that. Okay, so what happened was groups were formed in week 8 in tutorials, and then in week 9 they were not necessarily required to, but encouraged to come to the tutorial workbook, which is built in here. I've built it into the presentation. So this here, these are the pages of the tutorial workbook to scaffold this process. So I'm going to take you through it. So they come into their workbook and introduction to group formation, talking about the fact that they have formed groups. So there's relevant content for them. It's not just you are in group or this is about group. It's relevant. Last week you formed, into your groups. And this week we discussed the process of. So it's really relevant and it's topical and it's directly aligned with the content that they've been talking about in classes. So we talk about Tuckman, we go back to Tuckman, we talk about the team development journey here. Forming, storming, normally forming a journey. No, it's not a lot, I guess I see that. Everyone's done it somewhere, haven't we? And just bringing to the front of mind the fact that student groups perhaps will go through some of these processes. So what you're not seeing is that I've just put answers in so that we can do this as a portfolio, but these are the text boxes where students can enter their information. So we can also give, the top part here where I've got the mouse, that's hint text. So you can prompt students and you can say, as it says here, forming can be described as, hi, it's nice to meet you, give some examples, and then ask them what's happening in your group this week. So you're giving them the theory, but you're making it really contextual for them and practical for them, and they get some meaning out of it, hopefully. And then forming reflection, describe your thoughts for the success of this group after the development stage. So you're not just saying reflect, because we all go, can't do that, reflecting, we don't want to. But if you coach them to do it this way, we think that the results are a little different. So again, because this is, and all groups are going through different stages at different times, and some groups might have 1 meeting and some might have 6, they're overachievers. We just put a couple in there for that week. So they could be storming, they could be forming, we'll see where they're at. In the same week, we've also got a group planning template. We used to, when I was teaching, we would ask them to get out their pieces of paper back in the analog days and write down each other's mobile phone numbers and email addresses. Okay. Nowadays they just form a Facebook group instantly, right? Everyone's doing group. Let's just make a Facebook group. But we did in this workbook, we've asked them certain things about their group. Obviously who you are, but the fact that it's really good to have some planning and agreements written down from the get-go. So the whole beginners you need to go on, even with the group, set some rules, because invariably you'll get to the end of the semester, so-and-so didn't ever turn up to what were your group rules, what was the consequence for that? We didn't have any. So if you're coming back and filling this in, then hopefully they are avoiding some of those. So expectations, just all sorts of things about the group process itself and what they should be doing in meetings. So they can put in who's doing what, so those rows add more rows as you enter some information in there, and some examples of what you did and a personal group reflection. So after each meeting, getting the student to think, what was it valuable, what did I get out of it, did I participate fully? So bringing it back to their own experience again. And then every week, we slipped in a little graduate attributes workbook into the process. And we did an overview. What are the graduate attributes? There's our GradApps logo, institutionally. And just talked about what they are. So you'll gain them, what this particular task is focusing on those 3, and the characteristics of each attribute and to rate yourself. So we come to the... So then we put in space for 4 extra people in the group. The maximum was probably 5 people. Ideally it was 3 to 4 people. So we left space in there for extras. So this is, all they had to do here was put their group member's name and the exact same process. So they rate their group members the same way and just enter the score report. Okay, but then this is what happens when you pop these little things covertly into workbooks. So these are, they had also, apart from every week, they had a final reflection. So I've copied some comments here from the students. These are direct quotes from the students in these workbooks in the final reflection. So student A response, I'll use these skills I learned to talk to my fellow colleagues in the future to gain more insight and feedback on how I'm growing as a paramedic. Like, it's a link between assessment and work and graduate attributes and the future. Student B, I will use the communication skills for effective teamwork, addressing issues, also allowing myself to communicate my message effectively. We can see here some cogs turning, some meaning happening. I just put in a done communication skill there, but this is some of the analytics from the back end of Pebble and the graphs that you can get, and then you can delve into the key off, but you can get the raw score, and then you can go and look at all the written entries as well. I'll just copy the other two from up there. So you can see overall, this is the final week of where students will rate themselves. Collaboration. When working together, I made me realise I need to put in heaps of effort because the mark isn't just for me, but for my teammates. Yay! That's the essence of collaboration. With other courses containing group exercises and assignments, I will try to follow the learning style of group work at all opportunities, linking to other courses. So we're seeing that our knowledge spreads further, it's beyond just this particular course. So again, you can graph there. You see that people are mostly rating themselves 3 and 4, or 4, sorry, here's 4 and 5, those two there. And I know I'm running out of time, so I'm just flying, sorry everybody. Organisation. I think my organisational skills have grown every day while at university, but especially on this project because it involved other people. These skills will be very beneficial to my future career. Without organisation, we've set ourselves up to fail this task. Without organisation, nothing can be accomplished. There were so many of these, there were like 900 in each case of these to read. I could have sat and read them all day. I was glowing on it. Like, yay! Music was playing in my ears. So when you can see that there's meaning making, you then think, yes, it's like the big tick, yes, someone's getting it. So why though? Like, why? Why can't they see this in an essay? Why, when you ask them to write the essay about their root process, they're not writing that stuff, they're writing really theoretical, I'm going to say boring stuff. But it wasn't linking the theory and the practice, which is where I think is where meaning comes from, is that link. So we think that it's because they were given the time, but also the space. And it was just in time, it was right there as they're doing it, as it's meaningful for them. This section of the workbook was not even assessed, and that was made clear in the introductory video. The response to the graduate attributes question was entirely voluntary, and the total number of workbooks submitted out of the 2,600 were 1,492. So we got lots and lots of data. Just some quick numbers, week 9, you can see that I'm not going to read them out because you can probably read themselves, I think, to write out. But we know pretty good numbers. I was really happy there for that week. Yay, look. Week 10, oh, we dropped a little and I started to think, is this going to take? Week 11, oh my goodness, I was like almost running from the building. It's half, nearly half. The very end, the final week response, highest in the whole lot. Yes, oh, I can come back tomorrow. So we didn't tank after all, and we were getting, like, those are phenomenal figures, nearly 1,000 student voices for each of those graduate attributes, linking, in most cases, I haven't read every single one, but enough to get a sample, linking what they're doing in the task to other learning and to their futures and to their graduate attributes. Very quickly, so what we think, and I've kind of just said this, they are making real connections and real links between their tasks, their knowledge and their work practice. They can make meaning of graduate attributes, which is not necessarily asking them in a way that is meaningful to them. And that we are seeing that the graduate attributes are meaningful to future academic and to workplace requirements. We need these. So it's really comforting to see that the students are getting it. And I'm a communication academic, so I can't help but put this in here. Is it because they have a reflective place that's not being called a reflective place? Is the medium, is it because they're in a space that feels safe to them? It's not being asked to write an essay. It's at the time they're learning it. So do we go back to McQuillan on this, and is the medium the message? That's it. Chris said it before, so I think he knows that's it. Yeah, so I think that's through the evidence. Now, would you like to add
well, I think we're going to do something. I can